Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with artists, writers, scientists, educators, social scientists, and government leaders. We meet each one to one. I'm delighted to welcome Fatima Shama, the city's Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs. As the daughter of immigrants herself, she understands the evolving needs of newcomers in search of better lives for themselves and their families. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Just yesterday, John Liu, whose parents are both originally from China, won the Democratic primary for city comptroller, which puts him in line to be the first Asian American to hold citywide office. Is that a big deal? And if so, what took so long?
Well, first, it's a big deal. It's a wonderful. It's great. So, congratulations to Mr. Liu. I think for immigrants, this is a real moment in New York's history, and a real moment of the story of immigrants to New York. I mean, we can walk through the cities of New York and absolutely recognize that immigrants built our bridges and built our subways and our store owners and our educators and quite honestly beautify our streets. This is another moment in history in New York where immigrants are now emerging in government. And it's not the first time, right? You know, John Liu actually was the first Asian American elected into the city council.
Right.
But for a citywide elected position, it's a wonderful story of integration and a story about how immigrants are a fabric of this city, are a future of this city, are very much a part of the future of this city, and have the opportunity to do as much as anyone else who lives here.
When we talk about immigrants, the immigrant population in New York City, how many people are we talking about? And I assume we're talking about both people who were born in other countries and moved here, as well as their children, or not?
So that's a great question. Our Department of City Planning, who helps us gather this data, who are just amazing at this, have basically estimate that 37% of New York City's population are foreign-born. Should we include their children, so those who come and their children, whether they're children born here or not, we would say that 60% of New Yorkers
Are you kidding?
Are either foreign-born or either children of foreign-born, which is a very big number.
That's amazing.
It's a very big number.
That's amazing. Now, how many do we know how many are documented immigrants as opposed to undocumented?
So we have a very wonderful policy in the city where we don't ask. So we estimate that about 500,000 of the foreign-born population in New York City are undocumented.
About 500,000. And what's the number altogether?
So 37% of the foreign-born population comes to about 3 million people. And so 500,000 are what we estimate to be undocumented.
And the actual number of immigrants would be documented and undocumented would be, you said there were 60%.
So close to 3 million.
Okay.
That's including only the foreign-born, not their children.
Right.
It would bring us closer to 4.5 or 5 million if we were to include their children.
Wow. With such a big population and with this mix of both documented and undocumented immigrants, what role does the Office of Immigrant Affairs play?
So the City of New York has a very robust policy, thanks to the leadership of Mayor Bloomberg, to make sure that immigrants throughout our city have access to all city services. Our office's role is primarily to provide and to serve as that liaison. Our mandate is to really communicate with immigrants about city services, ensure that they're getting access to city services, remind them about the importance of their accessing city services, and then in parallel to work with our colleagues within city government, within our city agencies, and help them sort of foster a better relationship with the immigrant communities, better their policies on services to the immigrant communities. And quite honestly, it's a robust conversation. So there's a community relations, if you will, dynamic. And then there's a policy making and quality of life dynamic. And so our office's role is to, quite honestly, facilitate that that greater discussion.
I mean, it is like I think you said yourself, a kind of don't ask, don't tell attitude towards immigrants.
We want immigrants. I mean, immigrants come to this city for history, right? For years, in the history of the city, immigrants come in search of freedom and opportunity, and we want them to access that, right? We want them to attend our schools. There's a legal responsibility, but we want them to attend our schools. We want them to access our public hospitals, because we know preventative medicine and preventative health makes a healthier population. But we also want to make sure that should they need help, they can access it without fear. We want them, in the event that they're a victim of a crime, to report a crime and to not fear doing that. They are a part of our city, and they run our business. They run many businesses. They are very much a part of the economic fabric of the city, and it's something we celebrate.
So if an immigrant family reports a crime and the cops come to their house and find that they are largely non-English speaking, or they appear to be from somewhere else, the cops are not going to say, let me see your papers.
No.
Okay.
There are instances, however, where, not in that event at all, where someone is arrested and then convicted of a crime. Right. Where there is the federal law has requested that we communicate documentation status.
But that's only if they're convicted of a crime?
Yes.
Okay. Not if they're charged for a crime, only if they're convicted.
Right.
Big difference.
Big difference.
So immigrants, so if you run down the list of some of the city services that all immigrants are entitled to, regardless of their legal status, you meant public school education, school breakfast and lunch programs,
Absolutely.
those free programs.
Absolutely.
I understand there's a program to give health insurance for children under 19 that all children are entitled to.
So this is actually a federal program that comes through our state.
Okay.
And it's a child health insurance program where we provide health insurance. The state provides and supports health insurance for all children, regardless of documentation status, that under the age of 19.
Okay.
So what we do want to ensure are that all families are accessing that opportunity, because it's critically important in order for kids to be in our schools that they, of course, have the necessary vaccines to be there, but also that they're, having their annual visits, and when they have an earache, that they're actually going to a primary care physician, not using the emergency room when necessary. Of course, they should, but having a primary care physician is critically important. We know, and our children, regardless of their status, can have that.
Prenatal care for women, regardless of status.
That's right.
Emergency shelter if you're homeless.
That's right.
Child welfare and foster care services.
That's right.
Didn't know that. Admission to CUNY schools.
So CUNY has an amazing policy and recognizes that students, certainly there are a number of students that are in our city's high schools that are undocumented, and CUNY has developed an incredible policy on allowing undocumented students graduating from New York City public high schools to access CUNY. And they not only have access to coming to CUNY, but to participating in the scholarship opportunities that CUNY provides.
Really?
As well as the Macaulay Honors College.
Okay.
Which is, quite honestly, a model for this country, and one that I would love to see replicated.
Is there any kind of financial aid that they would not be entitled to, say federal loans?
Right. So anything Stafford, I'm not even sure that there are Pell Grants, given the status of the financial situation with the federal bank, the federal sort of pot of money. But any federal loans
would be out.
They're ineligible for those.
Okay. But CUNY scholarships or state grants or loans,
so
they would be eligible for?
I understand that CUNY has a loan scholarship.
Okay.
And so students are eligible to participate in the sort of pool for that scholarship, which is really remarkable.
Right. Is there a large, so all these services are available to immigrants as long as they're available, but are there a lot of them who don't know they're available or are afraid to step up?
So I would say yes. I mean, I think that we still have a great amount of work to do to help immigrants in this city feel very comfortable with accessing services from government. Most people who've come to this country have come from countries where their governments are not necessarily seen as friends to the population. You know, they've run, if you will, from their governments.
Right.
And so the mere idea that government is here to serve you is a new phenomenon.
Right.
But one that we take very seriously, and one that we care a great deal about, and one that we have to actually do a better job in communicating to the larger population.
How do you feel when you hear people complain that illegal immigrants are here, or undocumented immigrants are here, using city services, but they're not paying taxes, and they are a drain on all of those who are taxpayers?
So I think what an unfortunate thought, mostly because I think we each need to remember that we are products of whenever it was someone who came to this country in search of something. That's sort of my first thought, is that, you know, we truly are all immigrants, no matter what generation what generation you are. The second part is everyone participates in the city's economic, you know, engine, right? Whether we're buying in a local store, purchasing clothing, paying rent, everyone is participating in the overall wealth of this city. And actually, there are many people, undocumented, who participate in paying taxes, you know, in a formal way as well as a less formal way.
Right.
So it behooves us to not recognize that to serve, you know, to do the right thing, if you will, to serve people and to allow them to have access to all of our city services is not only the right thing to do, but we are not losing money as a city by doing that. And there's enough that is already given. You know, when you think about the number of immigrants who come and are low-wage workers in the city,
right,
the city couldn't function without them.
Yeah,
and
most cities couldn't.
Exactly. And quite honestly, they are the largely undocumented population.
Now, welfare, now called something else, but what most people know as welfare, and food stamps, which are both federal programs. Undocumented immigrants, I assume, would not be eligible for
not
those.
Eligible.
That's correct. Okay.
There does come a part where you talk about prenatal care. And so, you know, a mother who is pregnant has access. You know, we're ensuring that not only her health is taken care of, but that she's eating well, and that for 2 years after she gives birth,
right,
we want to ensure that that child has the appropriate nourishment. So they do have access to some additional funds to support.
And that is a federal program?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more with Fatima Shama, the city's Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs, after the following messages.
Did you know CUNY leads the way for students with disabilities?
CUNY Leads means linking employment, academics, and disability services. If you're a CUNY student with a visible or invisible disability, the City University of New York offers eligible students free career development and placement services. To find out if you qualify, visit cuny.edu/CUNYLeads. CUNY Leads, to the career I always wanted.
Welcome back. I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Fatima Shama, Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs. We were talking about this great policy that CUNY has towards undocumented students. And a student may complete their degree at CUNY, but then they get out and they don't have a Social Security card, and they face difficulty finding jobs. I had a student of mine wanted to do an internship and couldn't get an internship with the company because he didn't have a Social Security card. And so they're in this kind of limbo.
Yeah.
What can be done for students like that? Is anybody trying to do anything for people like that?
So that's a very sad reality that we, I think, as a nation have got to realize. You know, Mayor Bloomberg, who is a tireless advocate for recognizing, and I'm just very lucky to be in this post, given his commitment to students and to the future of this city and this country, but certainly recognizing sort of what immigrants and the lifeblood, quite honestly, that they are for this city. But so in this is a real reality. We have got to capture the talent that we not only have in the city, but we've got to figure out a way to make sure that we are providing opportunity for this very student, right? So in this country, there are approximately 65,000 young people that fall into this very category of young folks who've come to this country because of with their parents, who are in our schools, who are on a pathway to educational success, but cannot matriculate in some instances in university, or once they're done with university, have access to opportunities, employment opportunities, because of their undocumented status. So on the federal level, the Senate, there's an act that sits before the Congress called the DREAM Act, which has been around for a couple of years, and it's really, the focus of this act is really to think about this very candidate, this very young person who has been in this country for about 5 years, has graduated from a high school, goes on to college, completes 2 years of university, or serves in the military,
right,
and provides an opportunity for that young person to get onto the path of citizenship, onto naturalization, assuming that they maintain good moral character along the way. We could, quite honestly, solve this very scenario.
So what's the status of that act now?
So it actually fell short of going into further discussion from 7 votes in 2007, and I think that...
so it never got out of committee, or did it get out of committee? It never got out of committee?
I'm not quite... I know that we fell short 7 votes in 2007, and that it is being reintroduced, and it's sort of it's in discussion. And then I hope, we certainly in New York are really advocating for something to happen, specifically on the DREAM Act, because the future of so many young people depend on it, and the future of this country depends on it.
Was that part of President Bush's Immigration Reform Act? Was the DREAM Act part of that, or was it separate?
I think it was separate.
Okay.
The DREAM Act was introduced in 2001.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's got quite a history.
Okay.
Was reintroduced. The furthest it's come, towards gaining real momentum and success was in 2007.
Okay.
And so I think many of us are hopeful that this time around, when the discussion resurfaces and things are looking positively, we hope that it could actually gain greater momentum.
The recession has been hard on most of us. Has it hit the immigrant population of the city especially hard?
Undoubtedly, it has hit them. Has it hit them? That's hard to measure. I would say we know that they must be impacted, right? So many people have become unemployed. You've got many more eligible, if you will, individuals who can work. Immigrants are in all work environments, right? So they're part of everything economic in the city and around within the workforce. I would say that the low wage immigrant worker, those that are used for childcare, or are used in the restaurants, or are used in local small businesses, might be the ones that have suffered the greatest. I don't think we've been able to capture what that looks like. I was asked recently, did that mean that we had many people emigrate and go back to their homes? And I thought we may have had some, but the truth of the matter is as bad as things may get here, the hope for freedom and the hope for opportunity remains. And so people withstand and do what they need to during this, they ride out this tough time to sort of realize, what can truly be in search of this American dream.
Right.
So.
It's the language not having proficiency in English. Is that a big problem for some of the particularly undocumented immigrants?
I mean, yes. But we do our best in the city, certainly in providing city services, to not allow that to be the obstacle. In fact, last year, in July of last year, the mayor signed an executive order mandating all city agencies to provide appropriate language services, interpretation and translation of city documents or city services to immigrants, right? So language should not be a barrier when accessing city services. on 311, anyone can call and speak to anyone
Right.
in over 170 different
Right.
languages. We're
Right.
prepared to do that.
But how about people wanting to learn English to advance themselves educationally, economically? My understanding is that there just aren't enough language programs for them. There's a real hunger for these programs, and
You're
it's not meeting
absolutely
the
right.
need.
No, you're absolutely right. We likely have, 2.5 million immigrants who are interested in participating in English as a second language programs. And we simply don't have the financial capacity or classroom capacity to provide, to fulfill all the needs of those individuals. The city has done a tremendous amount of work, and currently, actually, there's a very creative and innovative project, which I believe CUNY TV has been a part of, called We Are New York. And it is it's a TV program that models, it's an English language learning program. It's a way that the city has creatively thought, how can we provide language opportunity and an opportunity to learn?
So they're basically English classes on television. You
In
can
some
watch.
regard, I mean, you
Okay.
can watch. It's a TV show that models good English with dubbing on the bottom. Dubbing's not the appropriate word, but it also highlights city services, and it highlights the immigrants in this city.
What channel is it run on?
So it runs on CUNY's channel
Okay.
twice a week.
Okay.
And it's called We Are New York. It's a very smart and creative program that we hope people will access. There is thought and real hope to actually allow people to greater access to the show by having community conversations around this, where lesson plans will be developed. But this is one innovative way to sort of provide English language conversation opportunity and teaching opportunity to a much larger audience than we have been able to
Right.
provide services
Right.
to. But a very, very good point.
Exploitation by employers. I'm always reading, these horror stories about, these, sometimes they're restaurant workers in Chinatown. There was a big judgment against Ali's restaurant, where you have employers working, often undocumented immigrants, long work weeks, paying $1.50 an hour, taking their tips.
Yeah.
What more can be done to protect workers from that kind of exploitation?
This is real, right? We've got a tremendous amount, unfortunately, of fraud that happens towards immigrants, and this very phenomenon is something that we are trying to regulate and enforce. And actually, our Department of Consumer Affairs is the sort of agency that works specifically on this. The one critical issue is making sure that immigrants are telling us this. We are going out and finding this. There are stories that are sort of brought up in the news, but we need people to tell us when this is happening, whether it's about, an immigrant going out to sit with someone to fill out their naturalization papers, or in hope of, getting on the path to some form of legalization of being here, and fraud, sort of this immigrant service provider sort of in malice, mistreats or misrepresents their services. You now have an immigrant who not only is undocumented but feels completely like they have no opportunity to complain about this, and that's
Right.
actually not true.
Yeah.
We actually want to know these things. We've got to enforce when maltreatment is happening.
And therefore they should come to which city?
So it's the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Okay.
And so one of the easiest ways to do this is to call 311,
Okay.
where they can, in their language and comfortably and almost anonymously,
Report what's
been
Okay.
going on, and that would allow the Department of Consumer Affairs to investigate.
The Bush administration, I think this was probably the best thing that the Bush administration did, was to propose major immigration reform, which would have provided a pathway to legalization for the nation's many, many undocumented immigrants. But that went nowhere. I mean, do you see any signs that from the Obama administration that there may be hope for some kind of immigration reform?
So I think, sort of harboring back to the hope, if you will, and sort of the story of John Liu, right? The story of President Obama is one of again success. And when you think about sort of the immigrant story, that's one that you can sort of hold on to. President Obama has been, certainly during his campaign, talked about the importance of immigration reform, talked about the importance of immigrants. He has, in his administration, discussed the importance of reform. I think that we will see something. I don't know when we're going to see it. I think that many of us are very hopeful that we will see it soon. But the healthcare reform conversation has sort of made some of us rethink the timing of when this will happen. I do think that the time is upon us, and we've got to do something about it. We've got to realize that we as a country cannot progress and cannot succeed sort of on the continuum of the history of this country if we don't realize the importance of immigration. We've got too many people who want to be here, who are here already, and there's no way that we're going to sort of get rid of them, if you will, using the term very loosely. But it's an important, this country needs all levels of whether it's education as well as talent, and we've got it. And we've got to figure out a way to do the right thing. One, because it's this country's story. Right. But two, because it's the future of this country, and we rely on it.
It's a very important issue, and what we do about it, and how we address not the problem, but the challenge of that our immigrants bring to us is. We're out of time. My thanks to Fatima Shama, New York City Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs, for joining me today. For the City University of New York and 1-to-1, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.